Hello everyone and welcome to my Smite Basic Jungle guide updated for the new jungle as of patch 3.8. So sorry it took me so long to get this guide out, but it is here now. Now, role of the jungler and when to back have not changed, however the starting build and route and the top 5 god picks have changed, so if you watch my previous guide for Season 3, you don't need to watch the role of the jungler or the when to back parts again, and as usual you can click on the links on screen to skip to those sections. So in this first section of the guide I'm going to talk about which items you want to buy at the start of the game and what route you want to take once you've left base. So the first item you're going to want to get is Bumba's Mask. That's going to give you more gold when sharing camps, also going to give you some MP5 and healing after killing a camp, and also more damage while killing the camp. You're then going to want to get 2 health potions and a red potion, which you're going to pop at 20 seconds before the game starts, then buy 2 mana potions and leave base. You're almost always going to get Purification as your relic. You might get Sanctuary if the enemy team doesn't have much crowd control, but that's almost never going to happen, so best to stick with Purification. Or if you're feeling really confident in your early game, you could get Blink, but I don't recommend it. The exceptions are you might want to get Death's Toll instead of Bumba's Mask on Thanatos to support his strong early game, on gods like Mercury and Kali, and if you're really not confident in your early game, then you might want to get tier 1 boots and 2 health and 2 mana potions instead of the red potion, and on Ao Kuang I would recommend getting Bumba's Mask and Imperial Helmet, which is tier 1 of Dynasty Plate Helm, along with a mana potion and a health potion. So after you've left base, you're going to want to make your way over to the solo lane side of the jungle, which is the short lane, and then go to the speed buff camp and take that with your solo laner, and then you can pick that up and then make your way over to the mana camp. Now, I was just checking for an invade here because they had a Thanatos on the enemy team, so you always want to be careful of that. Even if they don't have a Thanatos, just have a little look, just check. And then my solo laner dragged the camp out, which is what they're technically supposed to do here, but a lot of solo laners wouldn't do that, so don't worry if they don't, just attack it like normal and take that buff. Then go onto solo lane and help them clear the first wave, and as you'll see in this game, the enemy team really screwed up trying to get an early kill here, so we actually ended up getting 2 early kills. So if the enemy team do something stupid like that, you can always get ahead and get some kills. That works too. Then make your way over to the fire elementals after they spawn at 45 seconds, I believe. Don't quote me on that. You'll see in the next part of the guide because I have them written down in the next part. Then make your way over to the mid lane. I was hoping to get a kill on Giannis, but it didn't really work. And then make your way to the mid camps after clearing mid wave. So the solo laner came over to help us with mid camps here. Usually that won't happen, it's just you and the mid laner. But after getting the 2 kills in solo, they decided to rotate a bit, which I guess is fine. Then go and clear the mid wave and then go to the other side, mid camps. Normally while you're doing one side, the enemy team, the enemy mid and jungler will do the opposite side to you, so you won't be able to get both. However, we killed Thanatos and Thanatos was lost and afraid and 2 levels behind me at this point, so we were able to get both, which is really good. After this point, you can pretty much go anywhere. You can go and do back camps with your mid laner after clearing wave. So clear wave, go do back camps on one side, then come and clear the next wave, then go do other back camps or whatever you want to do. Or if there's a gank on a lane where you think you can get a kill, then definitely go off and do that. As you'll see in this game, I chose to go over and gank duo lane, but after that it's pretty much up to you, whatever needs doing. On screen is a drawn out version of the jungle route that I just showed you. On the right is the set of tips that I'd normally show. However, I was asked to split them up in the comments of a previous guide, so it's easier to see. However, they're still all available all in one for you to download in the description if you want to put it on a second monitor while you're playing or something like that. The first set of tips is the camp times, including the time they first spawn, how long it takes them to respawn, and a priority listing. And remember that ganking a lane is almost always more important than taking a camp, so be on the lookout in case there is an easy kill. The second set of tips contains the starting builds and the exceptions that I spoke about earlier. Remember that the red pot is quite expensive, it's 450 gold, so if you die with that early, then that's quite a lot of gold down the drain. So if you think you might die early, or you're not confident in your early game, then you might want to go for the level 1 boots instead. The third set of tips is just some bonus points to remember. Try to gank a lane as soon as you hit level 5 to make use of your ultimate, unless you're Kali, in which case it's fine to keep farming and try and get your build online as fast as possible, unless there's an easy kill to be made or a lane really needs help, in which case you should probably go and gank anyway. Don't leave a lane if there is a full wave of minions, share the XP and then leave. Make sure the support is warding Gold Fury and you can Sentry Ward Fire Giant once that spawns. On screen you can see me Sentry Warding Fire Giant now. As you can see, the Sentry Ward allows you to see all enemy wards placed in that sort of radius, and you can then destroy them and you get a bit of gold for that as well. And there's a really nice ward spot where you can just sort of throw a normal ward over that wall and see whether they're at their speed camp. You can also do it over at the damage buff as well. And you can see whether the enemy is there, see whether the camp is up, so it's useful for trying to invade as well. Keep enemy relics in mind. This is sort of a more general tip, not just for junglers. Keep enemy relics in mind. If you see an enemy use purification, then they can't stop your stuns for 160 seconds unless they've got an ability which immunes them or something like that. This is particularly useful for Najar's ultimate, which can be stopped if the enemy uses purification beads fast enough. The next section of the guide is the top 5 god picks. These are likely to change depending on which gods get nerfed or buffed each patch. I will make an update video if they do change. However, I deliberately left out Susano and Ratatoska because they're likely to get changed in the very near future. These are just recommendations on who you should be able to play if you want to jungle, so if you do really well with a god that I don't list, then that's fine, you can play them too. First god that I would recommend is Thor. He has a lot of mobility with his hammer and his ultimate. He also does a significant amount of damage, especially if you build a lot of penetration items. However, he can also be built quite tanky and used to initiate teamfights with this ultimate and help the support while still dealing damage. The second god is Ao Kwang because he does a ridiculous amount of damage very quickly, especially in the late game. He also has good mobility, and the slow on his 2 can help secure kills along with the execute offered by his ultimate. The execute is also really good because it puts you up in the air and allows you to travel quite a far distance, which is great for getting out of teamfights if you execute someone and then you are very low. Thirdly, I would recommend that you learn to play Hun Batz. His 3 offers him a good form of chase. He has great teamfight presence with his ultimate being good for disengaging and engaging, and also dealing with the enemy Thor when they miss their ultimate on you, as you can see in this clip. His crit chance after using an ability also gives him the potential to deal a lot of damage very quickly. Fourth god is Kali. Although she doesn't do a lot early game, once you get her build online, mainly her first 3 items, which are Boots, Chinsays and Hasten to Fatalis, she can destroy an entire enemy team with her ultimate, making her unkillable and getting a huge heal from killing her target. Final god that I would recommend is Najar. His ring toss is great for poke and also mobility. He also has a really nice heal from his passive when you activate his 2. Late game he can also do a ridiculous amount of damage with his ultimate, and his autos also hit incredibly hard, sometimes critting for over 1000. And of course, who doesn't enjoy the strange interaction of sashing onto a target that is in midair? So now onto the next section of the guide, which is the role of the jungler. The first 3 things that I'm going to mention are things that you should be doing no matter what god you're playing. However, the 4th and 5th things I mention are a bit different. Which of those you should do depends on which god you're playing and what the team needs. First thing that you should do is gank lanes. This could be to help secure an easy kill and get you and the players on that lane ahead of the enemy, or it could be to shut down an enemy player that is getting a bit too far ahead. Or if there is an enemy god that is really strong in the late game, for example Scylla, you could camp their lane and keep ganking it to make sure that they stay behind. The second and perhaps most underestimated thing you should do is show presence. This could literally be walking onto a lane, helping clear a wave and then walking away again, or it could be poking the enemy a bit and forcing them back. You do not have to full on initiate to show presence, just showing that you're there will make the enemy play a bit more passive and help alleviate enemy pressure on that lane. The third and most obvious thing is clearing camps. You should be getting speed buff for yourself to help your mobility around the map, also help the mid laner with mid camps and their damage buff, and the solo laner with their mana buff. Later on they can get them on their own if you're busy ganking a lane, but it is important that you help them in the early game because otherwise they can take a lot of damage from the camp, and it's also a good source of farm for you. Invading enemy buffs is also a good way to get ahead and put the enemy behind as long as it is safe to do so. Fourth point is the first god specific role, which is initiating teamfights. This is especially useful if you have a non-warrior god in the solo lane. This is usually going to be achieved by building gods like Thor or Hun Batz a little bit more tanky and initiating with their ultimates. The other god specific role is killing the enemy backline, which is the mages etc. at the back of the enemy teamfights. For example, a Scylla ultimate does a ridiculous amount of damage, so it's important that someone on your team can kill her quickly. A Wheelix is great for this because if the enemy is knocked up, then she can pull them in, meaning that she can take out targets without needing to get past the enemy support. Najar is also really good for this because his ultimate takes the enemy completely out of the team fights while he's dealing damage. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to that Bacchus who saved me from the Thanatos ultimate with one of the best timed meditations I've ever seen. Final section of the guide is when to back, which means return to base. This is something that sounds simple, but a lot of players can get it wrong, especially in a role that they're not familiar with. First situation is pretty self-explanatory. If you're on low health or low mana or even both, then there's not a lot you can do. The only exception to that is if you're low on mana, then you can still stay if needed, but play a bit more carefully. But other than that, you should probably return to base. The second situation is if you can complete an item. You shouldn't be walking around the jungle with 3000 gold or something like that. Getting a full item will help you a lot. Getting Warrior Tabai or Jotun's Wrath especially will give you really nice power spikes early on, and you don't want to be late with those. Third situation is a bit of an exception to the one that I just mentioned. If an easy kill can be made, then quickly go and get that before you return to base. In this clip I wasn't going to back anyway, but it's a great example of when an enemy without much of an escape, in this case it was Isis, was way too far pushed up and was therefore an easy kill. Final situation is more general advice, and it's to be ready for team fights and objectives. If the Gold Fury or the Fire Giant are about to spawn, or your team wants to group up and fight and take a Phoenix or something like that, then you want to be ready, so it's worth backing to ensure that you've got plenty of health and mana, and that you don't have any spare gold that could be spent on items to help you in that fight. So that's it for the video, guys. I hope you found it useful. If you did, then leave a like. If you didn't, then let me know why in the comments. Constructive criticism always helps me out. Subscribe to see more, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.